people interested in the Arab Muslim world.
Yeah.
Why is that important to you? I guess that's my question.
Okay.
I know it seems like a very easy question to answer.
No, it's not.
But
I'm thinking like it's a tougher question. Look, I am mixed Arab heritage. I'm Yemeni, Iraqi, Kurdish. I grew up in Dubai.
Right.
And I think growing up in Dubai, it's so multicultural. At school, I was friends with Lebanese, Syrians, Egyptians. And they were always telling me about what they do in whatever, Lebanon, Egypt, and, even dialect. Hearing each other's dialect and seeing all the interesting differences was always really fascinating to me. And then going to New Zealand, which is, the end of the earth, and it's not the most multicultural place, especially when I moved there in the world. And so you're automatically an ambassador without meaning to be for your region. Oh, you're from Dubai. Do you have the Simpsons there? Do you have McDonald's there? Do you have a camel there? Do you own? Oh, you're from Iraq. You must have lots of oil. No.
Right.
So and then I was constantly
in my backyard.
My backyard, camel and oil and diamonds. So I was always just explaining, and it wasn't It wasn't a racist thing. It was just they don't know. It was ignorance, right? And then seeing that shift after 9/11 to something completely different that I'm sure all of us have experienced, and always having to explain and
beyond the defense.
Exactly. And then moving back here, I was so interested to see that these issues existed within Arabs. We don't know much about each other. Like we know where Libya is, but we don't know what Libyans do or what they eat or what their history is. Do you know what I mean? And I always found that really interesting. And more interesting in a place like Dubai is that you'll meet someone's grandma who survived this war or did this, or she knows Turkish because she studied Turkish, a part of the, Ottoman Empire. I'm like, these are such interesting, important stories that no one's talking about.
Right.
And if they are talking about it, it's either so highbrow and academic that I don't care. You don't care to read, a whole thing about, that's super academic. And I was like, these stories need to be told because in a couple of generations, no one's going to remember. So to me, that's really interesting. And it was really frustrating for me being an English speaker who's Arabi, and I'm very proud of being Arabi. It's like it defines my identity.
Right.
Is that there's this thing where we're like, okay, you're not really an Arab because you grew up abroad, or you don't speak Arab like I do, so you're not really an Arab. And at the same time, from the Western perspective, you're getting these flat interpretations of what an Arabi is. You're either a terrorist, or you're like a, shopkeeper, or
taxi
driver, or a kebab shop owner,
or a doctor,
or a doctor.
We made it.
That's good.
We made it.
Or you're being played by white actors,
right?
In movies and TV shows, and I'm like, why is there this huge, spectrum of stuff? There's nothing in the middle, and I always feel like I'm in the middle. Not just me, but a lot of people from my generation and who grew up in places like Dubai,
right?
Or even in the West. So I'm like, there needs to be something for us that includes those people as well, but mainly for us. That's what was really important for me. Which is why the site is in English for now.
And Shamim, I think since you're also involved in this, and I want to direct this to you as well. Is this as important to you as it is to Maàn, and what does that mean to you as well?
So it's really funny. I always tell Maàn this. Like God or the universe or whatever you believe in lines things up for you. So at some point in my career, I was working for a Saudi agency, and the owner, his dad is called Iyad al-Madani, and he was the head of the Islamic world with the United Nations. He was also the Minister of Hajj, and he was basically the voice for Islam. And I used to always tell him, Mazen, how can I reach your dad? I want to do a PR campaign for us. I'd go through Sydney Airport, and I'd be walking in front of my mom, and the guy would be hitting on me, but then he'll be giving my mom a hard time because she looks Arab.
Right.
And now in this day and age, Arabs come in so many different looks and sizes, and white and black and blonde, and you could be in an elevator talking about someone, and they'll turn out to be Arab.
Right.
So we have such an amazing culture and such an amazing history, and we are amazing. Yet the publicity around us is awful. As soon as someone finds out you're Arab, they're kind of like, So, exactly. So I was like, what can we do? You know what I mean? And Maàn, his content has always been so interesting to me. I can listen to him speak forever. And I think the problem was that the target audience. Here, unfortunately, I focus more on lifestyle and everyday, fashion and beauty will get more hits than a book review, unfortunately.
Right.
So I said to him, why don't we educate the universe about us, So that's how it came around. So there's these guys in Australia called the Kanafa guys. And these guys took our heritage. I don't know if you know them.
Yeah, I've heard of them, yeah.
They took
I think
our
I've seen a video
heritage
about them, actually.
and they rocked it. They do the whole like dabka and they perform and they put on Arabic music in a time where Australia is one of the most racist countries. Please don't shoot me if you're Australian, but this is my perception.
Right.
So how can we take these guys and show the rest of the kids, the 16 and 17-year-olds, that you should be proud to be Arab? So the kid living in London or living in Brazil, and remember there's so many immigrants now coming out of Syria, coming out of Iraq, like more than ever
before, yeah.
So is our culture going to dilute? What's going to happen? And how can we connect with these guys and ensure that our voice is being heard?
Yeah.
Right.
And to me, it's also about empowering Arab. Like, I think for all of us have this issue, no matter what kind of Arab you are, like your parents have these super high expectations for you. Doctor, muhandis, or ma'mari, or, you have to be these things.
Doctor, engineer.
Yeah, sorry, architect.
I'm just trying to, in case you don't speak Arabic.
Or pharmacist or whatever, you know? And so for me, I was never into that stuff at all growing up. I was reading all the time. I was writing. I was watching movies. And my parents are very liberal. They were fine with that. But the greater community were like, really? You're going to go to art school? Really? You're going to be a writer? Like, what is that? But I just worked on an article on the Arab edition that I really want everyone to look at. It's a visual article. There's not that many words. And it's the history of Arab in the Academy Awards. Now, I'm going to ask you, when do you think the first Arab won an Academy Award, an Oscar?
I wasn't even aware that an Arab person won an Academy Award.
We be winning. We winning.
I had no idea. Well, when was it?
Everyone thinks it's Omar Sharif in 1963. No, it's 1943. The first Arab ever nominated for an Oscar was, I think, a few years before that. But 1943, Emile Khouri. He's a Lebanese guy who grew up in Mexico and LA. He's first generation Lebanese. And he won an Oscar for set design. He did the set design for Mary Poppins. It's a huge cultural iconic movie. He did the whole set design.
Damn.
Some of the original Walt Disney rides he designed, he created. He worked one-on-one with Walt Disney on so many movies. The Heiress, which he won an Oscar for, Bed Knobs and Broomstick, he won an Oscar for. He is an important guy in the art direction, set design world. How many Arab know about him? Zero, zilch, nada.
Right.
Another guy, The Exorcist, the movie, the original movie that started this horror genre was originally a novel. The guy who wrote it is Lebanese, first generation. He wrote the novel, he wrote the screenplay, he won the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay.
What?
Yeah, Lebanese. And in his Oscar speech, he thanks his parents for coming to the States as immigrants. Another really important guy.
I had no idea.
Yeah, no idea. There is every 2-3 years, there are Lebanese, Palestinian, Libyan movies, writers. Thelma and Louise, the biggest feminist iconic movie in the States. It's been selected to be a part of like the American History Museum of Movies, written by a Syrian American, Kathleen Khouri.
How can you not want to listen to him speak? Like, this is the thing. Nobody knows this.
Nobody knows. And the thing is that to me, if I had known about all these people when I was like 15, 16, I would have felt a bit more confident to be like, I'm going to go to art school, or I'm going to go to film school, or I'm going to be... Because look at all these other Arabs who have done this before I did. So there is a space for us.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Instead, we're busy... Christian and Jews and Muslims and Shia and Sunnah. Like, let's just... like. I don't mean to, obviously, it's important to some people, and that's fine. But let's focus on what amazing things we're doing. And
we
how
have in
amazing
common,
our
not
culture.
the things that divide.
Like,
you know what I mean?
Dates. Did you know that, like, we all eat dates across the Arab world, and each country has a different sort? Or the flower thing you were telling me.
Each Arab country has a flower as its official flower. So for Iraq, it's the rose. Lebanon doesn't have a flower, they have the cedar tree.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I think Libya is the lily. And we don't know why that is and why each Arab country has this. So this is an article a journalist for us is working on at the moment. You know what I mean?
Blowing my mind right now.
The most simple thing, mahshi. Mahshi, literally vine leaves. And
I love that.
Yeah. If you eat it in
Clearly,
Iraq
I'm hungry.
versus anywhere in the Levant versus Egypt versus Sudan, it's all the same concept, but it's ever so slightly different.
And there's specific reasons why they're all different.
Exactly. So the spices.
Shamim, just for our viewers, what is your background? I mean,
Sudanese Kiwi. So I grew up in New Zealand.
Oh, okay. But you don't have an Egyptian part in you?
Oh, my grandma's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm literally, a journalist once said this to me. He's like, you are globalization. You're not black and you're not white. You're not Arab and you're not Western. And that's the thing. Like but I'm so proud to be Arab. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't be able to do what I do for a living if I wasn't Arab. And if I got moved out of this region, I'll be worthless.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because
no, yes, you would be. I mean, like...
I was like, hey, yes, I
You
can
would be
attest
so
to
worth
that.
it. No, I mean, same with me. If I was doing this in New Zealand, nobody would care, you know? Like,
exactly.
It's so interesting, though. Everything you're saying is so interesting. And I'm trying to understand, as you're talking to me, I'm trying to understand, well, why is it that nobody knows this type of stuff? Why? I mean, has it become so politicized to a point where people just ignore that side of the conversation? And so here's a thought. I watch a lot of like debates and podcasts and interviews, and so there's this intellectual debate format content that's happening out in the US and Canada and Europe, and it's very intertwined. It's on YouTube, and that happens, and a lot of them talk about Arab and Muslim topics, and I never see Arab or Muslim representation. I mean, there are one or two people maybe who are like prominent in those areas, but it's not like we have a prominent presence, you know, and that's very odd to me. And why is that? I feel like sometimes we talk into an echo chamber. Like we all agree, you know, that this is important. We need to highlight this type of conversation to the outer world, and not just in our region, but globally as well. And I think living in Dubai probably like helps, because Dubai in itself is a success story, and it kind of gives you these platforms, like you said, like if you were outside of the region, or at least in Dubai, then maybe it wouldn't be as effective as when you're here. But yeah, just I wonder why that doesn't happen, why that doesn't translate to the Western world or whatever it is, or to wherever, like outside of our region. It's a very odd thing.
It's a combination of things. First of all, the fact that, you know, the mainstream wants very black and white definitions of everything. So they want just one Arab to speak for all Arabs. They want one Muslim to speak for all Muslims. They're not interested in the nuance, in the different shades and stuff. So when they find the West, or whoever they is, when they find that one spokesperson, khalas, everything's on that person. And they're expected to answer for everything. So they don't even give you the opportunity or give you room to come and be like, hey, here's a different perspective. Because think about it, you know, each debate or each morning show is like 10 minutes long or 5 minutes long. So they're going to get, you know, Reza Aslan, for example, who is like, you know, the Muslim guy.
Token
Muslim,
Muslim,
token, sort of. Or they get someone, Amani, sorry, I forget her surname, Amani, the woman who started Muslim Girl in New York. She is Palestinian, and she is the spokesperson for a Muslim woman. She's great. She's amazing. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But there are more. And then if you look at the UK, Arabs, I feel, on the mainstream don't have a voice there. It's more like the Muslim Asian community is more the definition of what a Muslim is.
Right.
And I think for Arab as well, the ones who are living abroad are trying so hard, and I'm not blaming them because, you know, we've all been there, trying so hard to fit in.
And you want to fit in.
Assimilate, and you just want to live your life, you know?
Right,
you're trying so hard to fit in that you tend to forget, or you're not really interested. And to you, being Arab means being backward. It means being old.
Exactly.
They don't think of Arab as being modern. And, you know, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you have, you know, Arabs who are in the Middle East, and they're also not having to deal with these pressures as much if they were living in the West. You know what I mean? Like, what's great about living in Dubai is that I don't have to keep telling everyone, like, no, I'm not, you know, this or that. I don't have a camel. I don't have all, you know, it's because everyone, it's just, we're all coming from different, you know.
Yeah.
So in a way, there's no need for it here. They're like, why do I need to do that? I'm not living in the West. But it's important to be able to think about what might happen to your kids and their kids, and in the future, what's happening. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's important, I think. What makes us unique is also what's really dividing us. Arab are so diverse, right? There's so many of us, which is why it's a good thing. But at the same time, we think we're so huge and so different that we don't need to defend ourselves, which I think is the danger. But to me, I'm Arab, so if someone's talking about Arab somewhere else, I'm like, well, hang on, what are they saying? Let me see, I'm quite intrigued. Well, no, that's not the only interpretation. Do you know what I mean?
That's super interesting, yeah. And what about you? What do you think?
Look, I think Dubai is like the perfect land for someone like us. you know, mixed backgrounds, we belong. And you're kind of accepted. Like, if I went to Sudan, I'm going to struggle. You know, in New Zealand, but here, it's kind of like a city for people. It's become, you know, everyone's like, I am Canadian Palestinian, or I'm American this, you know. But what surprised me the most when I moved out here, speaking of our culture and being backwards, I don't think our culture is backwards at all. I don't think if my father, Allah yarhamu, used to tell me come home early, it's because he's backwards. It's because he cares about me, and I've become the woman that I am because he had taken care of me. You know, I was really shocked when I moved out here to meet girls and guys who, you know, they had zero values when it came to our culture and our religion, whatever it may be. You know, all our religions are quite similar. And it was shocking, and I felt like they were imitating the Western culture.
Because they think that's modern.
Exactly.
But
for example,
modern, again, is you can interpret it in different ways.
Wild lifestyles. To me, it would be like a shock, you know, like, whoa. And I think Maàn and I, we talk about this quite a lot, like the values and our heritage, because we share a lot, you know. Coming from a home of Arab, grew up in Australia or New Zealand, you usually have a really similar background. But, you know, the right is right and the wrong is wrong. This is how we were brought up. And we don't do what they're doing because we are Arab and we're proud to be Arab. Come out here and I'm like, whoa. Everybody's wild. Like,
well, it's very odd, right? Because I feel like the modern Arab, such as ourselves, it's a very odd mix between conservative and liberal.
Yes.
You know, it's a very odd combination.
Everyone
where
has their own interpretation of that. Yeah.
Well, you feel like there's a side where, you know, you have to keep your values in place. You know, you have to take care of your sister. You have to, you know, you got to do all these conservative.
and teach your kids what your parents taught you.
Right, and it also takes some of that cultural elements and like embed that cultural element in your personality, and then there's your other liberal side, which is, you know, the party side. I don't want to like trivialize being liberal, but I mean, I'm just saying that you are more open to progressive ideas.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's just an odd mix between this generation of Arabs, right? It's just a very odd area that we're in. We're not like superbly Arab in a sense that we're traditional and cultural, but we do cherish a lot of that element, or many of those elements, but at the same time we want to be, you know, liberal and progressive and so on. But I think it's also a product of a globalized world, you know. So,
but it goes also back to this point of, well, we should ask ourselves, what is an Arab? There is no actual answer to that. There is no specific definition. The original word actually means one who speaks from his heart. Somebody wrote an article for us about
from our heart.
That's the actual essence of this word, bil Arabi, in Arabic. Is he who speaks eloquently from his heart. So that's everyone. So to say, you know, you're not Arab enough, or this is not Arab ideas, or this is wrong in the Arab world, you know, I don't like this conversation. I don't like that space, because I feel like it's you can't define what that is specifically, because there's so many interpretations of what an Arab is.
Right. And do you think like today there's like some sort of, you know, the Arab youth are starting to find maybe frustrations in, you know, their own culture, you know, that sometimes they feel their culture could be limiting to them, or, you know, that could be a byproduct of why people, like you're saying, like just go wild.
Just go
like,
wild.
I don't want to be traditional. I don't want to do this and that.
And they would have grown up in like Riyadh. Like, I grew up in Riyadh, but I'm an atheist. I'm like, what? Like.
No, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. If you come from a very conservative upbringing, sometimes you might go a different way. But I mean, again, there is, like you said, there's nuances, right?
Nuances,
and then you have to look at, like, if you are, you know, if you are the way you are, then what was your upbringing like? What information were you exposed to?
Exactly.
You know, what books did you read? What articles did you read? Where do you lean on the social spectrum? Do you prefer to be progressive, or do you prefer to be more conservative?
Look, it's all very subjective as well. And for, you know, every action there's a reaction. You know, you'll see these huge communities of Arabs that live in America or France or New Zealand or whatever, and you think, well, they live in the West, they should be progressive. No, because they're in their bubble.
They're
more closed, more narrow-minded than the ones that are in the Middle East. You know,
yeah.
So again, it's about, the problem here is, no matter where you are, is you always have to be looking outside of your immediate circle. That's the only way you're going to be enlightened. And how do you do that? Alhamdulillah, thank God we have the internet. Thank God we have the Arab edition. So people can go on there and you can get a different narrative. I think it's so important to expose yourself to what's happening outside of your immediate circle. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Through books, movies, TV shows, documentaries. YouTube
But
channels
who
are
does that
so...
these days? Not
Yeah.
everyone's like you guys, I swear. And I feel like,
yeah,
how do you change that?
You need more. The people are there's not enough content creators, and I think what's really difficult is that you'll see a lot of the Arab youth, going back to your point, or Muslim youth or Arab youth in the UK, they're operating from a place of anger. Anger is good because anger means you're passionate, but if you're operating from a place of continuous anger, you're not going to be able to reach those people. You're not going to have a clear head. No one's going to put you on TV to talk about this because you're crazy. Or no one's going to give you the right, platforms. And so it's important to be angry. And that's why I'm glad I started, this whole thing happened in Dubai, because I wasn't operating from a place of, I'm being suppressed and I'm not being able to say what I want because the West is making me look like this. I had a clear head. I'm thinking, what's missing in this social map? Okay, let me fill these gaps in.
Right.
And I think that clear-headedness is so important. Arab are hot-tempered. So.
We are, and that's the funny thing. That is the one thing that you can say we've got in common. We are so passionate, or we get angry really quickly. But the Western culture and the perception they're making of us, it affects all of us, even me. I'm going to be honest with you guys, and please don't be offended if you're watching this. I find anyone with a beard or any woman wearing a niqab scary, because that is how they've been positioned. I'm scared of ISIS. I'm so scared, and I really hope they're not watching this. I had a meeting
It'd be
last
very
week.
odd if they are.
I had someone follow me from him the other day, but anyway, blocked. I had a meeting with a guy, and initially I was uncomfortable because I could tell the kind of, I was, because of his appearance, so imagine I'm Arab and I'm Muslim and I'm Kiwi and I grew up here.
And those ideas have still filtered into
and I was like, and you know what? When I started speaking to him, he was amazing. Right. He was so warm. He was so passionate.
And you're Arab, right? And you had that perception, but then...
it's so important. And he's amazing. And his story is amazing. And I think you should interview him for the Arab edition. But... Oh my
for my
God.
podcast.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you are here.
And by the way, and this is the thing, we should definitely be sharing, because people like us, it's our job to kind of be heard. We want people to hear about us.
Yeah.
I think the biggest obstacle for Arab in terms of trying to say these stories and trying to start a blog or podcast or a YouTube channel, whatever, is this which all Arab have, is this fear of what are people going to say.
Right.
This issue of
Aib.
Shame or reputation or whatever. And here's what I keep when I meet young writers or young people that are like, oh, well, can I use a different name because I don't want my mom to see that, or my brother or sister or whatever, which is, it's understandable, but this barrier needs to kind of be pushed a little bit. Not disappear completely, but it needs to be pushed, and you need to sort of be able to talk openly about these issues that are affecting us, or about anything, and put your name on there or put a name on there, because...
And I'd like to think that we don't judge like we used to. And look, we are the new generation. It is up to us to kind of change or shift slightly to fit the new cultures and what's happening around the world, and raise our kids on it. For example, I don't want my kid to ever think how I think about people that are dressed a certain way. I want my kid... A child's never born racist.
Right.
Yeah.
A child's always born pure. They don't know the difference between black and white, Arab or not, Jews or whatever it is,
Because racism is like the biggest fantasy. It's like the fantasy of, who said that? Fran Lebowitz. If you guys don't know who Fran Lebowitz, look her up. She's really cool. So she said that fantasy is the racism is the fantasy of superiority. It comes down to, you think you're more important than this person, so you're better than them.
But
so
really
but really we're all the same. And so how do you then break down that fantasy, right? It's through interesting movies, articles, documentaries, I keep going back to the same point, or stuff. And this is my thinking in the Arab edition. And I interviewed this woman, Suad Mekanet. She's a Moroccan, Turkish, German journalist who has interviewed every single terrorist you can think of. She just won the Daniel Pearl Award, which is huge. She wrote a book called They Told Me to Come Alone. It's very good. So she said...
that sounds like the title itself.
Yeah.
Whoa.
It's really, really good.
And I bet your average Arab doesn't know her.
Doesn't know her, exactly.
I don't know her.
And I have had lots of discussions with her during an interview, and she came for the Lit Fest, and we had a big chat as well. And I told her, what is this fight between the East and the West? It's so big. Like, what do you think it's ever going to get resolved? And she said something that sticks in my head, and something I think about when I'm working on the Arab edition, is that there isn't a fight between the East and the West. It's a fight between people who want to build bridges and people who don't. And you get both from each end, right? And she's like, that's the most important thing people don't realize. And to me, I'm like, okay, well, what is this bridge made of? And this bridge is made of this: discussions, conversations, websites that are promoting a positive image, a realistic positive image of Arab. Do you know what I mean? So I think that is really important.
Do you think? Sorry, go
ahead. I think that one thing that is different to growing up to New Zealand versus Australia, and I keep going back to these regions because this is what I'm familiar with, is that in New Zealand, the migration didn't start. It started like maybe 50 years ago.
Right.
Whereas Sydney, it started years and years ago. Therefore, like there's a place called Bankstown. It's only Arabs. Arab Central, Arab signs, Arab everything. So what happened is the Australians, the white Italians live somewhere. The Greek live somewhere. And they're all, obviously, Australia is like very mixed. But no one's interacting. Whereas in New Zealand, everyone was just living together. So Kiwis are getting to know us. You know, we're not like secluded out of the community.
There's no segregation.
Right.
Segregation. Can't speak English now. See, Arab. But I think that's the thing. Engaging. Like, I find it quite interesting when I see cultures and nationalities that move into a Western country and they create a mini city of their own. And
Right.
I'm sorry, like this is how, if I was British, for example, I'd see these communities and I'd think to myself, yes, absolutely, this is a Western country. Why are you engaged with us? But why are you
and integrate and have your own stuff as well, but don't seclude yourself.
Exactly.
That's so interesting, guys. That's super interesting. Like, because everything you're talking about is like I'm connecting it back to something I've watched or something I've heard or something else. So this is also
really
interesting.
that interesting?
Yeah, this is so interesting. Do you think there's a? Do you think Arabs have?
We should literally do a thing like this.
Compete.
Never.
Compliment. But do you think? You know, I was talking to Nimr Abu Nassar. He was here. I was telling you earlier, a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, and he's also very passionate about Arab topics and issues and so on. And at some point, I asked him, I'm like, don't you think there's some level of accountability that needs to be had on the individual? Right? So it's not, we can't keep looking at Arab, because there's a lot of victimhood, you know, happening on a individual level. Like, well, I can't do this because of that. I can't, you know, I'll never get the opportunity. I'll never do this. It's because of the West. It's because of, you know, my mom. It's because of my dad. It's because blah, blah, blah. There's so much victimhood, you know, and do you think that there needs to be a mentality switch where we need to stop, you know, and just sort of like think about how can we take accountability over our own lives and take control over our own lives?
It's so funny. This is crazy that you're bringing this up. Last week, I had a meeting with a client. I think I told you about him. And he goes, Shamim, you know, I'm very biased when it comes to Kiwis or anyone that grew up in New Zealand. And I said, why? And he goes, because you all have this Kiwiana attitude. It's a can-do attitude. We're going to do it. You know, we don't sit here and question. When I launch something, I'm launching and I'm going to kick ass and I'm going to make it happen.
Right.
We've just worked on, like, my recent project was for Coca-Cola and we just worked on the FIFA World Cup music. So we signed Jason Derulo globally and then we took the 4 countries because it's the first time all these countries since the 80s are going to the World Cup. And it makes me so proud to be Arab. So Saudi, Tunis, Egypt and Morocco are all going to
That's
the
amazing,
World
yeah.
Cup. And we've created music.
It's going to be a big World Cup for us, actually.
And it's so, any Arab should be so excited and so proud. What we did is we created music for Egypt, Tamer Hosni and Jason Derulo. For Saudi, an artist and Jason Derulo. So what we did is music is the one thing that brought everyone together. And this is the thing, because we should be celebrating and there should be this can-do attitude. I feel like we definitely lack it.
Yeah, we definitely lack it. And you said it perfectly. You said victimhood. I think that I've never seen all these obstacles, whatever they were, in my work or when I was in New Zealand or here or whatever. I've never thought of it like, oh, it's because I'm this or it's because I'm that. I mean, that is a reality sometimes, but I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to go around this? How am I going to sort this out? I never thought I was going to be writing a blog or have a YouTube channel about these issues. It was never even in my mind. But the circumstances pushed me towards that, and I'm happy to do it, you know? And I think people assume you have to be like a creative person to make a difference. You don't. You can be an accountant. You can be, I'm sure accountants are very creative, but you can be doing anything. And I'll tell you guys a story. When I was going back to New Zealand I was visiting Dubai when I was a first year university, so still young. And I was going back to New Zealand for a holiday, and I stopped by Australia for transit. And it was just me on the plane by myself, and there were these rowdy
Private jet or what?
No. I mean, like, I was on a normal plane, but I was
Yeah.
traveling by myself. There was this bunch of rowdy Australian guys, big, like, rugby players. They were, like, on the plane, drinking and having a good time. I was like, God, you're so annoying. So we land in the airport. I'm walking out with them. So I just close to them. So we look like we're the same group. You know, we're all around the same age, even though they were, like, 6'20". And we were walking, and then this security guard or whatever, airport security, points at me and tells me to come to him. So I'm so exhausted. I'm like, yeah. So then he starts asking me all these questions. Where'd you come from? Give me your passport. Where are you going? Where were you staying in Dubai? And I wasn't clicking to what was happening. He was like, obviously he racially profiled me, right? Because I had the beard and the whatever, or I looked a certain way. And he was asking me all these questions, and I wasn't computing because I was so tired. And then when I was getting what he was saying, I'm like, I just want to yell and scream at him. And like, why is he, doing this to me? One of these guys comes up and he goes to the security guard, why did you stop him? And he was like, what do you mean? He was like, he came with us. We're all the same group. Why stop him? We're all the same age. Why did you stop him? And this guy was just like, oh, I'm just doing my job. And he's like, you're not doing your job because you didn't stop me and my mates. And I'm like looking at this exchange and I'm like, what's going on? So the guy was like, oh, the security guard got quite embarrassed, gave me his passport and just left. So I go to the guy, thanks a lot for doing that. And he's like, mu mushkila. And he was Lebanese. He didn't look Lebanese. He looked very, European.
By the way, that's all of Australia. Like, Adi, you'll be having a conversation with someone, sorry, this is British. You'll be having a conversation with someone, mate, and then all of a sudden he'd be like, yeah, I'm Lebanese. And you're like, what?
So
crazy.
He was like, so we had a conversation, and he was born in Australia, and he doesn't look like me. He doesn't look like an Arab, what you think an Arab looks like. But he understood and he knows. And because of his, of how he looked, he recognized there was a problem and there was an unfair and a wrong problem. Mm. And he went up and he wasn't even rude. He didn't yell. I was going to yell. I was going to scream at the security guard. And that would have probably ended up in a worse situation. But he was very calm and he was like, yo, what's going on? Why are you isolating him? We were all together. So to me, I think this guy, he's just probably like a university rugby player. I think he told me he was studying like some math thing. So he's not like a talent as you would think, a game changer, a cultural changer. No, he just used his ability to talk very calmly and the fact that he doesn't look Arabic to change the space around a situation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to me, I'm like, anyone can do that. Anyone can be like, this looks wrong. Let me make a comment. Let me say something. Let me change the direction of the conversation.